The dead man had been alone in a locked room, but the room had no wall. Before we begin, this is a work of fiction. All characters and events in this story are fictitious. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Rain had polished Berlin until the city seemed made of black glass. It shone on tram lines collected beneath construction barriers and ran in silver threads down the windows of the towers surrounding Alexanderplatz. The television tower floated above the clouds like a needle pushed through the night. Red lights pulsed at its summit, appearing and disappearing behind veils of mist. At street level, umbrellas collided beneath the station canopy. Trains thundered through tunnels under the square. Delivery bicycles passed taxis. Tourists photographed the world clock while commuters hurried around them without looking up. 31 floors above the city, Constantin Rehm raised a champagne glass and welcomed 300 guests into the building that was supposed to make him immortal. Signal House had once been an auxiliary broadcasting center constructed during the final decades of East Germany. Its original facade had been heavy, gray, and windowless, designed to protect studios and transmission equipment rather than attract attention. Constantin had transformed it into a tower of bronze glass and pale stone. The lower floors contained galleries, restaurants, and recording studios. Apartments occupied the middle levels. The upper floors held private offices, event spaces, and a members club that had already acquired a 6-year waiting list despite not yet being open. Only parts of the old broadcasting center remained visible. Constantin had preserved sections of exposed concrete and red signal lights, displaying them like trophies from a conquered age. The launch party spread across the 29th and 30th floors. Waiters carried trays between politicians, investors, actors, and television presenters. A string quartet played near a wall of glass overlooking the city. Dr. Klara Amsel stood beside a model of Signal House and wished she were somewhere else. At 42, Klara had spent nearly half her life studying buildings. She could identify the decade in which a wall had been constructed from the smell of its plaster. She could look at a crack and tell whether it had been caused by settling foundations, trapped moisture, or a hurried contractor trying to finish before an inspection. She had once designed museums. Now she investigated structures after something had gone wrong. The Berlin Building Authority had sent her to Signal House because several occupancy certificates remained conditional. Constantin had responded by inviting her to his launch party and seating her beside 2 city officials whose election campaigns he had supported. Klara understood the message. She was expected to admire the view, drink the champagne, and stop asking why alterations had been made to the tower's upper fire control system without municipal approval. Dr. Amsel. The man approaching her was tall, silver-haired, and perfectly dressed. Even before Constantin Rehm reached her, people shifted aside. He had that effect on rooms. His public photographs usually showed a controlled smile. In person, Klara noticed that he rarely smiled at all. He simply narrowed his eyes until others assumed he was pleased. "I was beginning to think you would avoid me all evening," he said. "I've been looking at your building." "You say that as though they are different activities." "They usually are." Constantin glanced at the model beside her. The tower had been reproduced in white resin, every balcony and external beam rendered in miniature. "You still have concerns about the upper floors," he said. "I have questions. Questions are concerns, wearing professional clothing. The smoke-controlled drawings submitted last month don't match the installed system. They were revised. I haven't received the revision. You will. I requested it 3 weeks ago." Constantin took a glass from a passing tray, but did not drink from it. "Signal House opens on Monday," he said. "The apartments have been sold, the restaurants are staffed, international press are here tonight. I would prefer that one misplaced document not become an obstacle. A missing fire plan is not a misplaced document. You always were uncompromising. We've met twice. I remember people who inconvenienced me." He turned towards the windows. From that height, the trains entering Alexanderplatz station resembled illuminated wires being pulled through the city. "Berlin survives because it changes," Constantin said. "Everyone praises preservation until preservation stands between them and a profitable address." That sounds more like a defense than a philosophy. "For what?" Klara looked at him. Constantin's expression remained calm, but his right hand had tightened around his champagne glass. Before she could answer, a young woman in a dark green suit appeared beside them. Selma Rehm, had inherited her father's height, but none of his stillness. Her black hair was cut to her jaw, and there was a restless intensity in the way she held herself, as though every conversation were an argument she had arrived prepared to win. She was Constantine's only child and one of Berlin's most outspoken architectural conservation lawyers. She was also, according to several newspapers, the most persistent opponent of her father's developments. "The minister is looking for you," Selma said. Constantin did not turn. "The minister can continue. He says you promised to introduce him before your speech." "I promise many things before speeches." Selma noticed Klara and nodded. "Dr. Amsel, have you approved the building?" "No." Constantin's eyes moved towards his daughter. Selma smiled without warmth. "Then at least one person here is still doing her job." "Not tonight," Constantin said. "Buildings remain dangerous after sunset." "This conversation is finished." "It was finished years ago. You simply kept buying new rooms in which to continue it." Constantin finally looked at her. For a moment, the sounds of the party seemed to retreat. "You have been drinking," he said. "No." "Then you have less excuse than usual." Selma walked away before he could dismiss her. Constantin watched her cross the room. Klara saw something in his expression that was not anger. It lasted less than a second and vanished before she could identify it. Fear, perhaps. Or calculation. A waiter approached carrying no tray. He was very young, with rain still shining on the shoulders of his uniform. He handed Constantin a cream-colored envelope. "This was delivered for you downstairs, sir." "By whom?" The courier left before security could ask. Constantin opened the envelope. Inside was a black and white photograph. Klara saw a group of construction workers standing in front of the old broadcasting center. The photograph was creased across the middle. One man's face had been circled in blue ink. On the back, 4 words had been written. "The wall remembers everything." Constantin folded the photograph and placed it in his jacket. "Who else saw this?" he asked. "No one, sir." "Find Mr. Lasker." The waiter hurried away. Klara studied Constantin. An admirer? Berlin is full of people who mistake resentment for moral courage. His voice remained steady, but he had gone pale. Across the room, the quartet finished playing. Applause spread through the crowd. Constantin straightened his jacket. "It seems I am expected to speak." He walked towards the stage without another word. Klara remained beside the model. She had seen the photograph's circled face clearly enough to recognize him later. At that moment, however, she did not know his name. Constantin's speech lasted 12 minutes. He spoke about memory, reinvention, and the duty of cities to look forward. He thanked investors, architects, and cultural partners. He described Signal House as a conversation between Berlin's past and future. He did not mention the workers who had built it. When the applause ended, he left the stage and spoke briefly to Dieter Quast, the chief financial officer of Rehm Urban Holdings. Dieter was compact and broad-shouldered, with rimless glasses and a face that seemed designed to reveal nothing. He had worked beside Constantin for 23 years. Their conversation became heated almost immediately. Klara was too far away to hear the words, but she saw Constantin press one finger against Dieter's chest. Dieter caught his wrist and removed it. A moment later, they separated. Constantin moved through the crowd towards the private lift. On the way, he passed Farah Demir. Farah was an investigative journalist whose articles had linked Rehm Urban Holdings to bribery allegations, unsafe construction, and the forced removal of tenants from several developments. She wore a black dress beneath a red coat and carried a small leather notebook. Constantin stopped beside her. Farah said something that made him laugh. Then he leaned closer and whispered into her ear. Farah's face changed. Constantin walked on. At the private lift, he used a black keycard. The doors opened, and he entered alone. Klara checked the time on the clock above the bar. It was 9:23. Less than half an hour later, Selma Rehm screamed on the 31st floor. The sound did not carry to the party below. What reached them instead was the alarm. A quiet electronic tone sounded throughout the upper floors. Music stopped. Conversations broke apart. Security personnel moved towards the lifts. Klara saw a man in a black suit pushing through the crowd. Uwe Lasker, Signal House's head of security, had the thick neck and cautious eyes of someone who spent his life expecting other people to lie. He touched an earpiece and demanded that the private lift be cleared. Klara followed him. You need to remain downstairs, he said. I'm the municipal inspector assigned to this building. This is a security matter. The alarm is connected to the building systems. That makes it my matter. He did not have time to argue. The lift doors opened, and they entered with 2 guards. The journey to the 31st floor took less than 20 seconds. Selma stood outside a room at the end of a narrow corridor. One hand covered her mouth, her other hand was streaked with blood. A bronze sign beside the door read, "The Quiet Room." The door stood open. Inside, Constantin Rehm lay on the pale floor beneath a wall of dark walnut. The room had been designed as a private listening chamber. There were no visible speakers, no artwork, no furniture except a low black table and 2 chairs. A crystal award had shattered beside Constantin's head. Blood had spread beneath his silver hair in a thin, dark fan. The sharp metallic smell hung in the air, and one piece of crystal had caught a strand of hair against the floor, like an insect trapped in ice. Klara stopped at the threshold. One of the guards entered, knelt, and touched Constantin's neck. He's dead. Uwe caught Selma's shoulders. What happened? I don't know. Why are you here? He sent me a message. When? I don't know. A few minutes ago. What did it say? He told me to come upstairs. Uwe looked into the room and then at the blood on Selma's hand. Did you touch him? I thought he might still be alive. Where is your phone? In my pocket. Do not touch it. Klara examined the doorway without crossing the threshold. The door was solid steel beneath a walnut veneer. An electronic lock sat within the frame. A small camera faced the corridor from the ceiling. At the opposite end of the room, 3 sealed windows looked east towards the television tower. No other door was visible. Uwe told one of the guards to close the corridor and contact the police. Klara crouched near the threshold. A dark streak marked the bottom of the door. Don't touch anything, Uwe said. I'm not. What are you looking at? Graphite. He bent closer. The streak resembled pencil dust mixed with grease. From the lock? No, the hinges are concealed. Klara looked across the room again. The dark walnut wall behind Constantin was composed of vertical panels running from floor to ceiling. The central panel was perhaps half a centimeter higher than the others. She could not tell whether it was an error or an illusion caused by the lighting. Selma lowered her hand. My father locked this room when he wanted privacy. Who had access? Klara asked. My father, Uwe, possibly Gabriel. Gabriel Renz? The architect. Uwe shook his head. Mr. Rehm was the only person authorized to use the room tonight. Then how did Miss Rehm enter? Klara asked. The door was open when I arrived, Selma said. Uwe turned towards her. That isn't possible. It was open. The door locks automatically. It was open. Did you use your father's key card? No. Where is it? They looked towards Constantin. His jacket had fallen open. A black key card lay clipped inside the breast pocket. Uwe entered the room carefully and checked it without removing the card. This is his. Klara looked at the ceiling camera. Show me the corridor recording. Police will handle it. Then police should arrive quickly. Sirens rose from the streets below. Chief Inspector Benedict Rowe reached Signal House 11 minutes later. He was 51, thin and untidy, with rainwater on his coat and a permanent crease between his eyebrows. He listened while Uwe described the electronic access system and interrupted only once. You are telling me no one could enter. I'm telling you the records will show whether anyone entered. That is not the same thing. Benedict turned to Klara. They had worked together on 2 previous structural investigations, neither involving murder. He trusted her opinion about buildings and almost nothing else. What are you doing here? He asked. Being politically persuaded to approve an unsafe tower. Did it work? No. Good. I dislike paperwork after funerals. He pulled on gloves and entered the quiet room. A police doctor examined Constantin while a forensic photographer documented the floor, doorway, and broken award. The preliminary conclusion was simple. Constantin had been struck once behind the right ear with a heavy, narrow object. The crystal award might have caused the injury, but its position was unusual and none of the visible fragments showed blood. There were no defensive injuries beyond a bruise on his left forearm and a small tear in his shirt cuff. His phone was missing. His wallet and keycard remained in his jacket. The corridor recording was reviewed in Signal House's security office. At 9:23, Constantine stepped out of the private lift and walked directly to the quiet room. He used his keycard, entered and closed the door. No one followed him. At 9:46, the door opened. Selma appeared in the corridor from the direction of the emergency stairwell. She approached the room, looked inside, and entered. She reappeared seconds later with blood on her hand. Between Constantine entering and Selma discovering him, the corridor remained empty. The windows in the quiet room were triple glazed and permanently sealed. Sensors indicated that none had been broken or removed. The ventilation openings measured less than 10 centimeters across. The door's electronic record showed a single entry, Constantine's keycard at 9:23. There was no record of the door opening for Selma at 9:46. Uwe insisted this was impossible. Benedict played the recording again. Selma approached. The door was already open by several centimeters. Could Constantine have opened it before he was attacked? He asked. The door closes under its own weight, Uwe said. It cannot remain in that position. Klara returned to the 31st floor. She stood in the corridor while technicians dusted the door and frame. The quiet room looked different now that Constantine's body had been removed. Without him, the blood and shattered crystal seemed less real, as though they belonged to a theater set waiting to be cleaned. Klara entered. The room absorbed sound. Even the rustle of her protective clothing seemed distant. Noam Weiss, the artist who had designed the acoustic system, had described the space in an interview as a room where Berlin could not reach you. Klara walked towards the walnut wall. The vertical panels were book-matched, their grain patterns mirrored so that dark shapes opened across the surface like smoke. The central panel remained slightly higher than the rest. She crouched and examined the floor. A fine black residue had collected beneath it. Graphite and wax. The same material marked the bottom of the door. Benedict entered behind her. You have the expression you use when a building has offended you, he said. This wall has moved. Recently? I don't know. She pressed her knuckles against the first panel. It produced a low, solid note. The next sounded the same. At the central panel, the sound was deeper. Hollow? Benedict asked. Possibly. The drawings show reinforced concrete behind it. Which drawings? The plans security gave us. The plans submitted to the city show an acoustic isolation cavity. How large? About 40 centimeters. Large enough for a person? No. Klara looked at the raised panel. Not according to the submitted drawings. Benedict sighed. There is always a sentence like that with architects. The first interviews began shortly after midnight. Selma Rehm sat in a private office overlooking Alexanderplatz. Her green jacket had been sealed as evidence, and someone had given her a gray blanket to wear around her shoulders. She stared at the city while Benedict placed her phone on the table. There is no message from your father, he said. He sent one. Through what application? An ordinary text. We found no message. He may have deleted it remotely. After he died? Selma turned. I received it. What did it say? Come to the quiet room. We need to finish this. Finish what? A discussion. About Signal House? About several things. Witnesses saw you argue earlier. We argued whenever we were in the same room. Did you threaten him? Yes. Benedict waited. Selma pulled the blanket tighter. I told him I would make certain he lost everything. When? That afternoon. Why? He was planning to announce the demolition of Köpenicker Hof next week. Köpenicker Hofe was a 19th century residential courtyard complex in eastern Berlin. Constantine intended to replace it with offices and luxury flats. I represented the tenants, Selma continued. My father bought the buildings through a subsidiary and allowed them to deteriorate. Once the repairs became too expensive, he could call demolition inevitable. You believed he created unsafe conditions deliberately. I knew he did. Could you prove it? I was trying. Were you working with Farah Demir? Selma hesitated. Yes. Your father knew? He suspected. What happened when you reached the quiet room? The door was open. He was on the floor. Did you see anyone in the corridor or stairwell? No. Why did you use the stairs? The private lift rejected my card. I came up from the 30th floor. Your father's phone is missing. I didn't take it. Did he keep information on it that could damage you? He kept information that could damage half the people downstairs. Benedict leaned back. What were you supposed to finish? Selma looked towards Klara for the first time. My mother died 6 years ago. My father controlled her estate. There was a sealed box of documents she left for me, but he refused to release it. What kind of documents? I don't know. You believed he was bringing them to the quiet room? He said he was ready to discuss my inheritance. Was your mother involved in his company? She was an engineer. Klara felt something shift in her understanding of the room. What was her name? She asked. Lucy Rehm. Did she work on Signal House? Selma nodded. She surveyed the original broadcasting structure before my father bought it. When? About 12 years ago. Did she identify any concealed spaces? Selma's eyes narrowed. Why? The building has been altered repeatedly. My mother said the old studios contained passages that never appeared on public plans. Equipment routes, cable channels, set transfer corridors. Benedict looked at Klara. Klara asked, did she ever mention the quiet room? No. Did your father know about those passages? He knew everything she discovered. Dieter Quast was interviewed next. He removed his glasses, cleaned them, and replaced them before answering each difficult question. I argued with Constantin because he intended to restructure the company, he said. That is not a crime. What did restructuring mean? Benedict asked. It meant removing me. After 23 years, Constantin considered loyalty a debt that others owed him. Why was he removing you? Dieter glanced at Klara. Signal House exceeded its construction budget. By how much? 86 million euros. That seems difficult to misplace. It was not misplaced. Costs increased. Were investors told? They received summaries. Accurate summaries? Dieter cleaned his glasses again. Benedict continued. Where were you between 9:23 and 9:46? In the main reception space. Witnesses? Dozens. Continuously? I spoke to the deputy mayor, 2 investors, and a representative from the Dutch Pension Consortium. Did you enter the 31st floor at any point? No. Did you know the quiet room contained a hidden passage? Dieter's hand stopped. I was not aware that it did. That was not my question. You asked whether I knew it contained one. No, I asked whether you knew it contained a hidden passage. There is no hidden passage. The correction was small. Klara noticed it. How can you be certain? She asked. Because the old transfer corridor was filled during construction. What was it filled with? Concrete. Who authorized that work? The architectural team. Who approved payment? I did. Do you remember every invoice from a project 86 million euros over budget? This one was unusually expensive. How expensive? 460,000. To fill a corridor? It included structural reinforcement. Klara wrote the number down. Who performed the work? Spreework Bow. Do they still exist? They entered liquidation 2 years ago. Convenient, Benedict said. Dieter's expression did not change. Farah Demir refused coffee and asked whether she was being detained. Not yet, Benedict said. Then I would like my coat back. It is being examined. For what? Anything that might help. Farah folded her arms. Without the red coat, she appeared smaller than she had at the party, but no less controlled. What did Constantin say when he spoke to you? Benedict asked. He congratulated me. For? He had learned that my newspaper was reducing its investigative team. And then? He said that once I lost my institutional protection, he would sue me personally. Did that frighten you? It interested me. You have investigated him for 5 years. 7. What were you trying to prove? That Rehm Urban Holdings concealed safety failures, bribed housing officials, and used shell companies to force tenants from protected buildings. Did you succeed? Not sufficiently. Were you working with Selma? I speak to many sources. She has admitted it. Farah's eyes hardened. Then you should protect her identity more carefully than you have protected mine. Did you send Constantin the photograph? No. Benedict placed a copy on the table. Farah looked at the circled worker. She knew him. Klara saw recognition before Farah controlled it. Who is he? Benedict asked. I don't know. You reacted. I reacted to a photograph being placed in front of me during a murder investigation. What happened to him? Farah looked at Klara. You work for the building authority. Ask them. His name would help. Samir Demir. The room became still. My father, Farah said. He was a site manager during the first attempt to redevelop this building. What happened? A fire started inside a sealed service level. 3 workers died. My father was accused of bypassing a suppression system. Did he? No. Was he prosecuted? The case collapsed, but newspapers printed his face for months. He never worked again. He died 4 years later. Did Constantin blame him? Constantin paid for the experts who blamed him. Did Lucy Rehm work on that redevelopment? Farah looked surprised. Yes. What did she believe caused the fire? She believed temporary walls had blocked an emergency route. She wrote a report. What happened to it? Constantin buried it. You had a reason to kill him. I had several. Where were you when he died? In the 30th floor bar. Were you there continuously? Farah smiled faintly. No one at that party was anywhere continuously. They moved between rooms, drinks, and useful people. Did you enter the service stairs? No. Do you know how to reach the quiet room without using its door? No. This time, Klara could not tell whether she was lying. Noam Weiss arrived wearing a silver jacket over a black shirt. His hair was almost white, although he was only 36. He had become famous for creating installations from the mechanical sounds of cities, railway brakes, ventilation shafts, bridge cables, and abandoned factories. The quiet room had been his contribution to Signal House. You designed a room that prevents sound from entering, Benedict said. Reduces sound, Noam corrected. Absolute silence is biologically impossible. The body becomes the loudest thing in the room. Could someone enter through the wall? No. Could someone move the wall? No. Klara placed photographs of the graphite residue on the table. What lubricated the panel tracks? Noam looked at them. Graphite wax. So there are tracks. For vibration isolation. You just said the wall could not move. It flexes by several millimeters. The panels are mounted on a floating frame. Why is the central panel raised? It wasn't when I completed the installation. What is behind it? An isolation cavity. And behind the cavity? Concrete. You have inspected it? No. Gabriel told me the old transfer corridor had been filled. Gabriel Renz again. Benedict showed Noam a close photograph of Constantin's injury. We believe he was struck with an object approximately 4 centimeters wide, made from a dense metal. Does anything in your installation match that description? Noam's expression changed. The dampers. What dampers? Brass masses attached to the rear frame. They reduce resonance. How many? 12. Could one be removed? With tools. Could it be used as a weapon? Anything can be used as a weapon. Where are the dampers now? Behind the wall. Klara said, then we need the wall opened. Noam shook his head. The panels were sealed after calibration. By whom? Gabriel's construction team. When? 6 weeks ago. Were you present? No. Did you manufacture the dampers? My fabricator did. Were any copies made? Noam hesitated. Decorative copies. Benedict leaned forward. Explain. During a donor preview, the dampers were displayed as part of the acoustic design. Guests could handle them. The originals were too heavy, so we made resin casts painted to resemble brass. How many? 3. Where are they? 1 is in my studio. 1 should be in the project archive. The 3rd was given to Selma. Why? She asked for it. Why? Noam looked down. Because we were together. It took Benedict a moment to understand. You and Selma Rehm were in a relationship. For 8 months. Did Constantin know? He discovered it last week. What did he do? He threatened to destroy my career and remove Selma from her mother's estate. Were you with Selma when Constantin died? No. Did you send her the message telling her to go upstairs? No. Did you have access to her phone? She once used my laptop to sign into her account. Benedict wrote something down. Where were you between 9:23 and 9:46? On the 29th floor, near the sound installation. Witnesses? There were hundreds of people. That is not an answer. No, Noam said. It rarely is. The following morning, Berlin woke beneath a low gray sky. News of Constantin Rehm's murder had spread before dawn. Television crews gathered outside Signal House. Camera operators stood beneath umbrellas while reporters spoke about the impossible locked room above Alexanderplatz. Klara returned to the 31st floor shortly after 7. She carried the original municipal plans, a laser measure, and a small rubber mallet. Benedict found her tapping the walls of the adjacent conference room. "You went home?" he asked. "For 40 minutes. Luxury." The conference room lay directly west of the quiet room. According to the plans, reinforced concrete separated them. Klara measured from the exterior window line to the corridor. Then she measured the quiet room. Then the conference room. She repeated both measurements. "We are missing 1 meter and 80 centimeters, she said. "Where?" "Between the rooms." "A service void?" "Too large." "The old transfer corridor?" "Possibly." Benedict looked at the walnut wall. "Dieter says it was filled with concrete. Dieter says an invoice claims it was filled with concrete. That is almost the same thing in modern construction." Klara opened the archive building drawings. The original broadcasting center had contained 2 large studios on the 31st floor. Between them was a narrow transfer bay used to move scenery, microphones, and equipment without taking them through public corridors. The bay had been closed during the first redevelopment attempt. Lucy Rehm's survey showed it clearly. Later drawings showed it filled. Klara examined the revision marks. The filled section had been added as a single gray block with no reinforcement details, material specification, or inspection signature. "This is not a construction drawing," she said. "It's a claim." "Can we open the wall?" "Not until we document the acoustic system and confirm it isn't supporting anything. Walls should not require permission to prove they exist. Most expensive mistakes begin with someone saying that." Forensic results arrived before noon. The Crystal Award had not killed Constantin. None of its fragments carried blood or tissue. It had been smashed after he fell. Microscopic particles recovered from the injury were consistent with brass, graphite, and a dark industrial wax. A brass acoustic damper could have caused the wound. Uwe Lasker searched Signal House's storage rooms. At 1:15, he called Benedict from the underground parking level. A brass-colored object had been found in the boot of Selma's car. It was wrapped in a green silk scarf. Selma's fingerprints covered its surface. At first, it appeared to be the missing weapon. Benedict ordered her detained. Klara examined the object in the forensic laboratory that afternoon. It measured 22 centimeters long and 4 centimeters across. Its surface had been painted to imitate aged brass. One end carried Noam Weiss's stylized signature. Klara lifted it. It was too light. She tapped it against the table. The object produced a hollow plastic sound. "This isn't brass," she said. The technician removed a small sample from the underside. The core was resin. It was one of Noam's decorative replicas. There was no blood on it. Benedict stood across the table. "Someone planted a fake weapon in Selma's car. Or Selma placed it there to make us believe someone planted it. That seems excessively complicated." "The room is excessively complicated. Her fingerprints are genuine. She owned the replica. Her fingerprints should be on it." "The scarf?" "Also hers." Benedict rubbed his eyes. "We have a threatening daughter, a secret lover who manufactures false weapons, and a dead man inside a locked room. We also have an original weapon somewhere behind a wall." Assuming Noam told the truth, Klara examined the replica's painted surface. A faint rectangular mark interrupted the finish near one end, as though adhesive tape had recently been removed. "Send this to trace analysis," she said, "and ask Noam who ordered the replicas. He says they were his idea. Ask for the invoices." Noam's studio occupied a former railway warehouse in Moabit. Recordings of Berlin filled the space. Train wheels, church bells, pedestrian crossings, ventilation fans, and rain striking different metals. Benedict and Klara found the mold used to create the resin dampers on a workbench. They also found an email from Gabriel Renz. 6 weeks earlier, Gabriel had requested an additional replica. The message said the project archive required a lightweight demonstration model. Noam's assistant had made it and delivered it directly to Gabriel's office. That made 4 replicas, not 3. Gabriel had not mentioned possessing one. They found no brass weapon. Gabriel Renz met them at Signal House that evening. He was 47, with sandy hair, pale eyes, and a voice so calm that every sentence sounded rehearsed. Architectural magazines called him a visionary. His buildings were known for hidden structures, moving facades, and interior spaces that appeared larger than their external dimensions allowed. He had designed Signal House's conversion from the first sketches. You ordered an extra acoustic damper replica, Benedict said. For the archive. It never reached the archive. Then someone misplaced it. It was delivered to your office. I receive hundreds of samples. The sample later appeared in Selma Rehm's car. Gabriel's calm expression tightened. I had no reason to put it there. Did you know she had handled the original demonstration model? Everyone at the preview handled it, so it would be easy to place her fingerprints on an identical object. Gabriel looked at Klara. You are encouraging a theory without understanding the construction. That is why I'm asking you. The old transfer bay was filled with concrete. The quiet room has no secondary access. Did you witness the concrete pour? No. Who did? The contractor. The contractor no longer exists. That is not unusual. Who inspected the work? My site architect. Name? Holger Maas. Where is he? He died last year. Benedict glanced at Klara. Gabriel continued. You are searching for architectural theater because the ordinary explanation is uncomfortable. What is the ordinary explanation? Klara asked. Selma entered through the door. The lock recorded no entry. Electronic systems fail. The door remained open despite its closer. Mechanical systems also fail. The cameras show no one else. Then perhaps no one else was there. You believe Constantin smashed an award over his own head? No. I believe Selma killed him. Klara walked towards the walnut wall. Gabriel followed. She pointed to the central panel. Why is that panel higher? Installation tolerance. You specified a maximum tolerance of 2 millimeters. Materials move with humidity. Walnut expands across its grain, not along its length. He said nothing. Klara crouched beside the graphite residue. What caused this? Track lubricant. You told police the wall did not move. The support system allows adjustment. How much adjustment? Not enough to admit a person. Then why is there a full-height latch concealed behind the fourth panel? For the first time, Gabriel looked startled. Klara had not found a latch. She had guessed. The surprise lasted only a moment. But she saw it. So there is one, she said. Gabriel's face closed. There are maintenance fasteners behind several panels. Full height? I would need the installation drawings. You designed the room. I designed the building. Specialists designed the room. Noam says you sealed it. I supervised contractors. Which contractors? Gabriel turned towards Benedict. Am I under arrest? No. Then this interview is over. He walked away. Benedict waited until the lift doors closed. You lied about the latch. I tested a theory. Police call that lying. Architects call it presenting a concept. You are becoming difficult to defend. You don't need to defend me. You need to obtain a warrant for Gabriel's office. The warrant produced financial records, correspondence, and 2 sets of Signal House drawings. The first matched those submitted to the city. The second did not. In the second set, the transfer bay between the quiet room and the Western Conference Room remained hollow. A narrow maintenance path ran through it. The path was accessible from the conference room through a pivoting acoustic panel. The quiet room's walnut wall could open inward by almost 70 centimeters. Not enough to appear like a conventional doorway, more than enough for a person to pass sideways. The drawings proved that the locked room was not locked. They did not prove who had used the hidden route. Gabriel claimed the second plans were early concepts that had never been built. Dieter claimed he had never seen them. Noam admitted that Gabriel had prohibited him from inspecting the wall after installation. Uwe insisted his security team had not been informed of the passage. The police opened the Western Conference Room wall. Behind a fabric panel, they found a concealed release. It did nothing. Thermal scans suggested solid material beyond it. Klara studied the mechanism. The release cable had been cut. Someone had disabled access after Constantin's death. They closed the route, Benedict said. From which side? The quiet room? Possibly. Then how do we reach it? Through the wall. A specialist team began removing the panels. By evening, they had exposed reinforced plasterboard, steel framing, and foil-backed acoustic insulation. Behind that was concrete. Dieter had been correct. The transfer bay appeared to have been filled. Benedict stood among the dust. Our secret passage is a wall. Klara touched the concrete. The surface was cold and smooth. She knocked against it. Solid. She moved 30 centimeters to the right and knocked again. The sound changed. Not hollow. Different. She looked at the floor. The concrete did not continue below the raised access platform. It ended several centimeters above it. This is a shell, she said. A shell of what? Lightweight concrete panels. They appear solid on the thermal scan. Foil insulation reflects the scan. She pointed to a seam disguised beneath acoustic tape. The panels slide. Workers removed the floor trim. Beneath it, they found a steel rail coated in graphite wax. The wall had not been filled. It had been fitted with panels designed to resemble a concrete barrier. When released correctly, those panels folded into the service bay like the leaves of an industrial door. Someone had created a false wall behind the false wall. The discovery changed the investigation. It also gave nearly everyone a possible route to the victim. Gabriel had designed it. Noam had calibrated the acoustic panels. Uwe controlled the building. Dieter had approved the false invoice for the concrete work. Selma's mother had surveyed the original passage. Farr had spent years researching the old broadcasting center and the fire that killed 3 workers. Petra Solano, the construction union organizer who had argued with Constantin during the party, had supervised workers on the upper floors and possessed mechanical access keys. 6 suspects. 6 reasons to hate the dead man. Only one hidden wall. The first person to admit using the passage was Petra. She did so after police found fibers from her dark green coat inside the service bay. Petra was 54, with close-cropped hair and hands marked by decades of construction work. She had organized protests against Rehm Urban Holdings and had once poured red paint across the entrance to Constantin's office. She did not frighten easily. I entered the bay 3 days before the launch, she said. Why? Benedict asked. One of my members told me the fire route had been concealed. What did you find? The sliding panels, unapproved electrical cables, no sprinklers, the same conditions that killed workers during the original fire. Did you report it? I planned to. Why didn't you? I wanted photographs and documents first. Constantin's lawyers would have called it an unfinished service area. Did you send him the photograph of Samir Demir? No. Did you enter the passage on the night of the murder? No. Your coat fibers were inside, from 3 days earlier. Did you know the passage opened into the quiet room? I suspected. Did you threaten Constantin? I told him that if another worker died in his building, I would drag him through every court in Germany. Where were you when he was killed? On the 29th floor. Witnesses? Several union members. All of whom work for you. They work for construction companies. That is the problem. Petra leaned forward. You are searching for one violent person. You should be searching for a system. Constantin did not build his empire alone. Every unsafe wall had a signature. Every missing inspection had an official who looked away. Every worker ordered into danger had a supervisor pretending not to hear. Klara said, Who designed the sliding concrete panels? Petra's gaze shifted towards her. Gabriel Renz. How do you know? His details were stamped on the rail housings. Did you photograph them? Yes. Where are the photographs? My phone. The photographs showed the passage before the murder. They also showed 12 brass dampers mounted behind the quiet room's walnut panels. One damper was missing. The empty mounting bracket was visible in a photograph taken 3 days before Constantin died. The weapon had been removed before the launch party. That meant the murder may have been planned. Or someone had taken the damper for another reason and later used it. Noam was brought back for questioning. He studied Petra's photograph. That bracket wasn't empty when I calibrated the room. When was that? Benedict asked. 6 weeks ago. Who entered after you? Gabriel's team. Could the missing damper have affected the room? Yes. There would be a resonance near 40 hertz. Could an ordinary person hear it? Not as a tone. They might feel pressure or discomfort. Did you record the room after installation? Noam nodded slowly. The system makes automatic calibration recordings. Where are they stored? in the sound control server. Uwe gave them access. Most recordings contained nothing but test tones and low mechanical vibrations. One file had been created on the night of the murder. It began at 9:19 and continued for 31 minutes. Noam explained that the recording system activated automatically whenever the room's acoustic door closed. The microphones were concealed in the ceiling. At first, the recording captured Constantin walking into the room and placing something on the table. Paper rustled. A glass touched wood. Then Constantin spoke. "You should not have come through there." A second voice answered. The words were muffled by movement near the wall. The voice sounded female. "You left me no other way." Constantin laughed softly. "You always say that before making a choice. You promised to release the report. I promised to consider it. People died. People always die in old buildings." The second voice became sharper. "My father carried your blame until it killed him." Farah Demir. Benedict stopped the recording. "It is her." Klara was less certain. The voice resembled Farah's, but the wall distorted its higher frequencies. It could have belonged to another woman. The recording continued. Constantin said, "Your father accepted the settlement. He accepted silence because you made truth unaffordable. You have spent 7 years writing the same article, and you have spent 7 years buying editors." A scraping sound followed. Then Constantin said, "Put that down." The recording erupted in a dull impact. Crystals shattered several seconds later. A wall panel slid against its rail. Footsteps retreated into the service bay. The room became quiet. The recording proved how the murderer had entered and left. It appeared to identify Farah. Police searched her flat. They found copies of Lucy Rehm's original fire report, correspondence with Selma, and detailed sketches of Signal House's transfer bay. Farah was arrested before sunrise. She did not resist. During questioning, Benedict played the recording. Farah listened without changing expression. "That is not me," she said. "The speaker discusses your father. Someone wanted you to believe it was me. Who else knew about him?" Constantin, Selma, Dieter, Gabriel, Petra, several former workers, anyone who read my unpublished investigation. Where is the unpublished investigation? On my newspaper server. Who had access? My editor. Anyone else? Farah looked at Klara. "Someone entered my office last month. Nothing obvious was stolen. Did you report it?" "No." "Why not?" "Journalists who investigate wealthy men become accustomed to doors being opened." "Your sketches show the hidden route." "They came from Lucy Rehm's papers." "You said you did not know how to reach the quiet room without using its door." I lied. "Why?" "Because I obtained the plans illegally." "Did you use the passage?" "Not on the night of the murder." "Have you ever entered it?" 2 weeks ago." "Why?" "To confirm Lucy's report." "What did you find?" "That the transfer bay had not been filled, that the fire route was being concealed again, and that someone had removed one of the brass dampers." "Did you take it?" "No." "Why didn't you publish?" "I was waiting for proof of who authorized the work." "Did Constantin know?" "Yes." "How?" "I told him." Benedict stared at her. "You confronted a man you had investigated for 7 years and warned him that you had discovered evidence against him. I wanted him frightened." "Did it work?" For the first time, Klara returned to the audio recording. She listened through headphones while Noam displayed the frequency pattern on a monitor. Constantine's voice was clear. The second voice lost definition whenever it moved near the walnut wall. "Could someone alter this recording?" she asked. "Not easily. The server creates a checksum when each file closes." "Could the second voice be played through a speaker?" Noam considered it. The room's microphones would capture the speaker characteristics. "Would you recognize them?" "Possibly." They isolated the sentence about Farah's father. Beneath the voice was a faint vibration. It repeated at regular intervals. Noam magnified the waveform. "What is that?" Klara asked. "A ventilation fan, perhaps." "There is no fan in the quiet room." Then it came through the service bay. The vibration rose and fell. Behind it, almost beyond hearing, was a metallic squeal followed by a low bell. Klara recognized it. A tram turning across wet rails near Alexanderplatz. She walked to the quiet room windows. The tram lines were visible below, but the triple glazing and acoustic isolation blocked nearly all exterior sound. They tested the room. Even when a tram passed beneath the building, the microphones captured nothing. Then they entered the Western Conference Room. The old external ventilation shaft there carried sound from the street. A tram rounded the square. The same metallic squeal traveled through the wall. The conversation was not recorded in the quiet room, Klara said. Noam frowned. The file came from the quiet room microphones. The microphones are connected incorrectly. They traced the cables. During renovation, the labels for the east and west ceiling arrays had been reversed. The recording identified as the quiet room had actually come from the Western Conference Room. Constantin had not spoken to Farah in the murder room. The conversation had taken place earlier, next door. Someone had used a recording of that confrontation to frame her. The automatic system had combined the conference room audio with the quiet room's file name because the channels were mislabeled. Noam checked earlier recordings. The error had existed for months. Farah's confrontation with Constantin had occurred 2 weeks before the murder, when she entered the transfer bay to inspect it. The killer had not needed to manufacture her voice. They had simply found an existing recording and arranged for police to discover it. Who knew the channels were reversed? Benedict asked. Noam shook his head. I didn't. Who installed the cables? Gabriel's electrical contractor. Again, the architect's name appeared. Yet Gabriel was not the only person who could have discovered the recording. Uwe had access to the server. Dieter had access to project files. Noam had created the system. Selma knew Farah had confronted her father, and Farah herself might have used the recording to make an eventual denial appear convincing. At midday, a new message arrived from Constantin's missing phone. It was sent to Benedict. You have arrested the wrong woman. Beneath the words was a photograph of Klara entering Signal House that morning. The photograph had been taken from inside the building. Uwe ordered every exit sealed. Police searched floor by floor. They found Constantin's phone in a waste bin on the 24th floor. Its screen had been wiped clean. The message had been scheduled through a remote account, but the scheduling had been created after Constantin's death. It was not the murder's core concealment mechanism. It was intimidation. Someone inside Signal House wanted the investigation to continue in a particular direction. That afternoon, Klara entered the transfer bay. The sliding concrete shells had been opened, revealing a narrow passage filled with cables, steel tracks, and acoustic insulation. The air smelled of dust and warm machinery. She moved carefully towards the quiet room. At shoulder height, the wall's brass dampers were mounted on black brackets. 11 remained. The empty 12th bracket showed recent scratches. Klara photographed them. Near the floor, she noticed a line of pale grit. It led towards a recess behind the panels. She crouched. Inside the recess lay a torn piece of transparent plastic marked with black lines. It was part of an architectural tracing sheet. Someone had used it to wrap or carry a greasy object. She unfolded it beneath her flashlight. A partial drawing remained visible. It showed the structural transfer beams beneath Signal House's eastern facade. One beam had been circled. Beside it were the initials L.R. Lucy Rehm. Klara heard the wall move behind her. The concrete shells began sliding shut. She turned and ran towards the western opening. The first panel folded across the passage. The second followed. Stop! She shouted. The machinery continued. Klara reached the release cable and pulled. Nothing happened. The cable had been cut. The narrowing gap left less than 30 centimeters. She dropped to the floor and pushed her equipment bag through. Then she turned sideways and forced herself after it. The edge of the panel caught her coat. For one moment, she was pinned. She tore free and rolled into the conference room as the false wall closed behind her. Benedict found her on the floor. Someone activated the wall, she said. From where? The building control system. Uwe traced the command. It had come from a maintenance terminal on the 17th floor. By the time police arrived, the terminal was empty. The security camera outside it had been disabled 9 minutes earlier using Uwe's administrator credentials. Uwe was arrested. He denied activating the wall. My credentials were copied, he said. When? Benedict asked. I don't know. You concealed camera blind spots from us because they would destroy my company. You sold access data to private investigators. That was commercial information, tenant movements, staff routines. You allowed people to be followed inside residential buildings. I gave clients reports. Constantine was one of your clients? He was my largest. Did he ask you to monitor his daughter? Yes. Farah? Yes. Dieter? Yes. Gabriel? Uwe hesitated. Once. Why? Constantin believed Gabriel was copying project files. Was he? I don't know. Who else had your credentials? My deputy and the building systems contractor. Gabriel's contractor? Yes. Uwe leaned towards Klara. I did not close that wall on you. You knew I was inside. I saw you enter on the control system. Who else could see it? Anyone using the mirrored administrator account. What mirrored account? Uwe closed his eyes. Constantine demanded one. It allowed him to observe the security system without appearing in the user logs. Who created it? Gabriel's technology consultant. The investigation was no longer moving through a list of suspects. It was circling one name. Yet every piece of evidence against Gabriel remained connected to his legitimate role as architect. He designed the wall because he designed the building. His contractors installed the systems because that was their work. He possessed drawings because they belonged in his office. Suspicion was not proof. Then the archive burned. The fire began shortly after 2 in the morning on the 19th floor. It started inside a records room containing original contracts, structural calculations, and correspondence from the first Signal House redevelopment. The suppression system failed. Smoke traveled through service shafts and reached 6 floors before firefighters contained it. No one died, but 2 officers were treated for smoke inhalation. The original fire report written by Lucy Rehm was destroyed. So were the payment records linking the false concrete invoice to Spreework Bow. The server containing acoustic recordings suffered water damage. Gabriel's second set of drawings disappeared from police evidence storage during the evacuation. The case seemed to collapse in a single hour. By dawn, Farah remained in custody, Uwe had been charged with security offenses, Selma was still suspected of planting or handling the false weapon, and the strongest evidence against Gabriel had become ash. Benedict stood outside Signal House while firefighters rolled hoses across the wet pavement. We moved too slowly, he said. Klara looked up at the tower. Smoke stained several windows. Someone planned for us to find the passage. Why? To make the method look like the solution. It is the solution. It explains how the killer entered. It doesn't explain everything else. The planted replica? Someone wanted us to arrest Selma. The recording? Someone wanted us to arrest Farah. The administrator credentials? Someone wanted us to arrest Uwe. The fire? Someone wanted evidence against Gabriel destroyed. Benedict studied her. That last one sounds like Gabriel. Perhaps. Do you have another candidate? Klara looked at the smoke drifting above Alexanderplatz. A black mark had appeared behind the quiet room's sealed windows. Smoke had entered a chamber designed to be isolated from the rest of the building. She remembered the automatic acoustic recording, the misplaced tram sounds, the closed wall, the graphite beneath the door that should have shut but remained open for Selma, and the piece of Lucy's tracing paper found inside the transfer bay. I have a building that keeps contradicting its drawings, she said. That is not a candidate. No, but it is a witness. Klara returned to the quiet room after the fire service released the upper floors. A layer of soot marked the walnut wall. Most of it had entered through the hidden transfer passage. A second soot line marked the bottom of the main door. Klara crouched. The door closer had been removed for examination. The threshold was exposed. Graphite wax filled a narrow slot beneath the frame. She inserted a thin inspection mirror. A steel rod ran through the slot and disappeared into the wall. The rod was not part of the electronic lock. It connected the main door to the moving walnut panels. When the hidden wall opened, the rod lifted the door closer and held the corridor door slightly ajar. The feature allowed maintenance workers to move equipment between both rooms without becoming trapped. That was why the door had been open when Selma arrived. The killer had left through the hidden passage but had not fully closed the wall. The corridor door remained open as a consequence. When Selma entered and touched Constantin, the hidden wall slowly completed its closing cycle. The door closer re-engaged after she fled. The killer could not have known exactly when Selma would arrive unless the killer had sent her the message. The message itself was missing from her phone because it had not been a conventional text. Klara examined Selma's device again. Gnome's sound installation application remained installed. It allowed private audio invitations to be sent between registered guests. The alert had appeared on Selma's screen like a text, using Constantine's profile. Once opened, it automatically deleted itself. The account that sent it had been created on a design tablet registered to Gabriel Renz's office. Benedict obtained the tablet. It had been wiped after the murder. A recovery specialist restored fragments of the account data. Still, Gabriel's lawyers argued that employees and contractors had access to the device. Klara needed something physical. She studied the tracing fragment found in the passage. Lucy's initials appeared beside the circled transfer beam. Klara requested every surviving document connected to Lucy Rehm. Selma brought a box from her mother's apartment. Most of it contained photographs, engineering textbooks, and personal letters. At the bottom was an envelope addressed to Selma. Constantin had never found it because Lucy had hidden it inside the cover of a structural manual. The letter explained the old fire. Lucy had discovered that the fire suppression system was not responsible for the workers' deaths. A temporary concrete shell had been installed across the transfer bay, cutting off their escape. The shell was built to conceal an unauthorized change to the tower's structural frame. Constantine wanted to remove a support column to create a larger luxury space. Gabriel Renz, then a young project architect, had designed a transfer beam to carry the load. Lucy warned that the beam connection was inadequate. Constantine ordered work to continue. During construction, the connection shifted. Electrical equipment was damaged, starting the fire. 3 workers became trapped behind the false concrete wall. Samir Demir was blamed for bypassing suppression controls. Lucy kept copies of Gabriel's calculations. She intended to give them to investigators. Before she could, Constantine threatened to take Selma away and destroy Lucy professionally. Lucy remained silent. Years later, when Signal House was revived, Constantine hired Gabriel again. He did not do so because he trusted him. He did so because they possessed evidence against each other. The new tower's eastern facade relied on another transfer beam designed by Gabriel. Lucy had circled it on the tracing paper. Klara compared the beam with the surviving calculations. The connection was unsafe. Signal House's most expensive apartments rested partly on a structural detail that had never been approved. Constantine had planned to blame Gabriel if the defect was discovered. Gabriel had planned to blame Constantin for ordering it. The launch party had placed both men one inspection away from ruin. Klara telephoned Benedict. "We know the motive. We still need the murder." The weapon was removed 3 days before the launch. Petra's photographs prove that. Who knew she had entered the passage? No one, according to Petra. Someone knew. Her photograph shows the empty bracket. She entered after the weapon was removed. You think Gabriel took it while preparing the false wall? Yes. Where is it now? Klara looked again at Lucy's structural drawing. The circled eastern transfer beam contained a hollow inspection chamber. A chamber accessible only from the facade maintenance level. Gabriel had designed it. Police returned to Signal House after sunset. The eastern maintenance level projected beneath the glass facade 30 floors above Berlin. From there, technicians could reach external louvers and structural connections. Inside the inspection chamber of the transfer beam, they found a package wrapped in architectural tracing paper. It contained the missing brass damper. The metal had been wiped, but blood remained inside the engraved serial number. A strand of Constantine's hair was caught beneath the mounting bolt. The outer tracing paper carried Gabriel's fingerprint in graphite wax. His lawyers could explain the fingerprint. They could not explain the blood. Benedict ordered Gabriel's arrest. Gabriel was not at his apartment. He was not at his office. His phone had been switched off near Alexanderplatz. Klara knew where he would go. Signal House was more than the scene of Gabriel's crime. It was his greatest building, and it had begun to expose him. She found him in the quiet room. The walnut wall stood open. Beyond it, the narrow passage glowed beneath maintenance lights. Gabriel wore a dark coat and carried a canvas document case. "You should have left Berlin," Klara said. He turned. "I considered it." "Why didn't you?" Running is an admission. So is returning for the calculations. He looked at the document case. You assume too much. Lucy kept copies. For the first time, fear entered his face without disappearing. Where? With Selma. Gabriel lowered the case. You should not have told me that. Police are downstairs. Then you should have waited for them. I wanted to understand. That is your weakness. No, it was Constantin's. Gabriel looked around the quiet room. He did not understand buildings. He understood ownership. He believed that because he paid for a structure, it obeyed him. You helped him. I was 29 when the fire happened. I had a new practice and debts. Constantin promised one project would change my life. It changed 3 other lives first. The beam should have held. Lucy warned you it wouldn't. She exaggerated the risk. 3 workers died. Because the temporary route was blocked. By your false wall. Constantin ordered it. And you drew it. Gabriel's voice sharpened. You think lines on paper are decisions? Developers decide, officials approve, contractors improvise. Then, when something fails, everyone points to the name in the title block. You signed the calculation. I corrected it. After the fire, I corrected it. And Constantin kept the original. Gabriel said nothing. He controlled you with it, Klara continued. When the same flaw appeared in Signal House, he told you he would blame you again. He said he would give the authorities my calculations and claim I concealed them from him. So, you removed the brass damper. I needed a way to frighten him. You carried a weapon into the passage. A piece of metal is not a weapon until someone decides what it means. You entered the conference room before the party and opened the false concrete panels. You waited inside the transfer bay. Constantin went to the quiet room because you sent him a message from an anonymous account. Gabriel remained silent. You opened the walnut panel, Klara said. He recognized you. He said you should not have come through there. No. That sentence was not on Farah's recording. The real quiet room microphones captured only part of your conversation, but you deleted the file from the server. You have no file. No, but the server log shows a recording was created and removed using the mirrored administrator account. That account belonged to Constantin. You knew about it because your consultant created it. Gabriel moved towards the open wall. Klara did not step aside. You told him to release Lucy's report and the original calculations. He refused. Perhaps he laughed. He was good at making people feel small. Gabriel's breathing changed. He said I had forgotten what I was, he said. What were you? Useful. And then? He told me the building authority had requested the beam calculations. He said he would deliver mine in the morning. So you struck him. He reached for the alarm. You struck him behind the ear with the damper. Gabriel looked at his hand as though the object were still there. He fell. You smashed the crystal award to suggest it was the weapon. You took his phone. You left through the wall and planted the resin copy in Selma's car. She was already threatening him. You knew her fingerprints were on the replica. Everyone's fingerprints were on it. But you wrapped it in her scarf. Gabriel's eyes lifted. She left the scarf in Gnome's studio. It was easy. You sent her the invitation from Constantin's profile so she would discover the body. Then you used Farah's old recording to point us towards her. You allowed Uwe's stolen administrator credentials to point towards him. You built a separate accusation for everyone who might reveal what you had done. I built alternatives. You built rooms. Gabriel glanced through the open wall. Klara understood. You set the archive fire to recover the calculations. They were supposed to be there, but Constantin had moved them. He always moved the thing you needed most. And when you failed to find them, you returned for the weapon. I could not leave it inside the wall. Once you discovered the passage, you would search every bracket. So you hid it in the structural beam. It was the one place only I could reach without appearing on a corridor camera. You wrapped it in Lucy's tracing paper. Gabriel gave a tired laugh. I did not know the paper was hers. But you recognized the drawing. Too late. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Benedict called Klara's name. Gabriel stepped backwards into the transfer bay and pulled the release lever. The walnut panel began to close. Klara caught its edge. Gabriel moved through the narrowing passage towards the western room. Stop! Benedict shouted. He reached the quiet room as the panel slid across the opening. Klara pointed towards the corridor. Conference room. They ran. Gabriel emerged from the western wall and crossed the conference room before police reached the opposite door. He entered the facade maintenance passage. The route led upwards, towards the roof. Rain struck the exterior glass. By the time Klara and Benedict reached the rooftop level, Gabriel stood beneath the television tower's red glow. Berlin spread around him in every direction. Alexanderplatz blazed below. Trains moved through the station. Traffic flowed along Karl Liebknecht Strasse. Beyond the square, the city dissolved into mist and scattered lights. Gabriel stood beside the parapet, the canvas case at his feet. Benedict approached slowly. Move away from the edge. I am not going to jump. Good. I built this roof. That does not make the fall shorter. Gabriel looked towards Klara. They will close Signal House. Yes. They will call it dangerous. It is dangerous. They will tear apart everything I made because one connection needs reinforcement. 3 people died the first time you said one connection needed reinforcement. Gabriel flinched. The city will remember only the crime, he said. The city remembers what survives. You think truth survives? Not by itself. Sirens reflected in the glass below. Gabriel looked at the tower, the roof, and the skyline he had tried to reshape. Then he stepped away from the parapet. Benedict handcuffed him. The case against Gabriel Renz rested on more than his confession. The recovered brass damper carried Constantin's blood. The architectural tracing paper connected it to the transfer beam and to Lucy's calculations. Recovered account data showed that Gabriel's office tablet had sent Selma the disappearing invitation. Server logs proved that the real quiet room recording had been deleted through an administrator system created by Gabriel's consultant. Trace analysis found adhesive from Gabriel's archive labels on the resin replica planted in Selma's car. The false concrete panels carried fresh tool marks matching equipment recovered from his office. His structural drawings proved that he alone had designed the hidden maintenance route into the eastern beam where the weapon was concealed. Each clue had existed before the final confrontation. Together, they transformed an impossible locked-room murder into a physical journey through a building designed to lie. Dieter Quast was charged with fraud, evidence concealment, and conspiracy connected to the false construction invoices. Uwe Lasker faced prosecution for illegal surveillance and unauthorized distribution of security information. Noam Weiss admitted helping Selma access confidential project files, but was cleared of involvement in the murder. Petra Solano gave investigators the names of workers who had been ordered to conceal the transfer passage. Farah Demir was released. Her investigation into Rehm Urban Holdings became the largest article her newspaper had published in years. The headline did not mention the locked room. It read, "The buildings that were never empty." Lucy Rehm's letter cleared Samir Demir of responsibility for the original fire. Berlin authorities reopened the investigation into the deaths of the 3 workers. A memorial was placed at Signal House. It listed their names rather than the name of the developer who had owned the building. Signal House did not open on Monday. Engineers reinforced the eastern transfer beam and inspected every concealed route, service void, and fire barrier. The luxury members club was abandoned. The upper floors were eventually converted into public studios, archives, and affordable workspaces for independent artists. The quiet room remained. The walnut wall was fixed permanently open. Visitors could see the narrow passage behind it and the sliding concrete shells that had created the illusion of solidity. A plaque explained that buildings were not silent objects. They recorded decisions. They preserved compromises. They carried the weight of what people chose to hide inside them. Several months after Gabriel's trial began, Klara met Selma outside Signal House. Summer had reached Berlin. Tables filled the pavements around Alexanderplatz. Tram windows flashed in the sun. Selma carried a box of her mother's engineering papers. "We're giving these to the city archive," she said. "Your mother would probably insist they be indexed correctly. She would insist on doing it herself." They looked up at Signal House. Construction platforms covered part of the eastern facade. "My father used to say buildings belong to whoever could afford them," Selma said. "He was wrong." "I know. Buildings belong to everyone who has to trust them." Selma considered this. "Are you going to approve it when the repairs are complete?" "If the repairs are complete." "You really are uncompromising." "So I've been told." Selma smiled. This time, the expression carried no anger. A tram rounded the square. its wheels producing the same metallic cry that had exposed the false recording. Klara listened until the sound faded. High above them, the open wall caught the afternoon light. It no longer concealed a passage. It simply showed where the truth had been. Thank you for listening to the Unwritten Murder Files. If you enjoyed this story, please like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves intelligent mysteries, hidden clues, and impossible crimes. We'll be back next week with another complete case from the Unwritten Murder Files. Until then, remember, every mystery leaves something behind.